So, I'm going to be sharing a bit about the courage to belong. Some of you may be aware that in this path, which comes from an Asian portal, it comes from Buddhism. That's so much of the language is Buddhist language, Asian folks that have been caring for this for 2,600 years, and it goes with other wisdom systems. There is no contradiction. But this is the portal that we're entering. And in that portal is the teaching that it is the delusion of separation that causes us such suffering on personal level and on a planetary level. This idea even that belonging is can be seen as an issue we need to get over as adults, when in fact our whole species, our survival, is all around connection and belonging. I like Nikki Giovanni, who says the world is not a pleasant place to be without someone to hold and be held by. This practice, even if you are an introvert, is not about practicing out of connection with our true selves and others. Audre Lorde said, without community, there is no liberation, only the most vulnerable and temporary armistice between an individual and her oppression. That is a beautiful and terrible quote in my experience, because it can feel that temporary armistice as well as the vulnerability of acknowledgement. So much of this practice requires the vulnerability and the courage to say, I need to belong. And the difficult thing about this path is that before we can belong out there, we have to belong in here. I have to believe, trust that I am worthy to belong, that I am worthy of being held by my own heart, by my own connection to the earth. It's not something to get over. This very material, privileged society has such heartbreak that is masquerading as functioning adulting. That there is some aloneness, some safety in being isolated. That if I isolate enough and perform when I can't isolate, I will be able to structure something called safety. I can perform with others, giving them what they might or I might think they want, and then I can have belonging. But belonging cannot exist in performance because it is a felt sense. When I first wrote, this is the path. This is not the path of the smart, it's the path of the courageous. It's after years of being aware that there is no way forward but the way forward. At some point, what I'm reading, what we're reading, the places, the retreats we're going to, whatever that is, cannot be a workaround. I must embody belonging, a felt sense of being welcomed, known, included, supported, and connected. But the only way I can do that is to bring wisdom of my life and the discernment that comes with that. There is no long list of agreements that will allow belonging. Anybody who's worked with lawyers, around lawyers, connected with the law, knows that without the spirit, the embodied sense, it's just words that can be manipulated and utilized often in ways that are at cross purposes with the language of care, of justice, of whatever. Many of us, I know I have, entered spaces where the language is right, but there's no felt sense. Howard Thurman said there are two questions that we must ask ourselves. The first is, where am I going? And the second is, who will go with me? At this moment in time, for increasing numbers of people in this country who never maybe had to ask that questions, never felt the need, now these become essential questions. Where am I going, and who will go with me? The courage and the vulnerability of choosing to be yourself. What happens? Have I cultivated a felt sense of what belonging is? Do you know, is there a sense in your body? Oh, this is belonging. Perhaps it's sitting on a porch, on the grass, standing at the bus stop, whatever that is. Central to that felt sense is the cultivation of it. Where is that felt sense? Because belonging, in my experience, also has within it a call to ease. I can let my shoulders down. I don't have to be careful. I'm always curious. That's often when this is spoken about, mindful this and that. There's a tinge of fear that I've always felt that if we don't have these guardrails, something terrible will happen. Some cruelty will occur if we are our authentic selves. I believe for most of us, our authentic selves are kind and curious. But at any rate, we have to be with the vulnerability of coming in and out of belonging and noticing. I think a question that often comes up is belong to what? What am I going to belong to? Well, the good news and the bad news, as I said earlier, and we all know, belonging to my heart, my own heart, separate and apart from what any people, any institutions, any level of productivity that's often called in, belonging to ourselves. What is the practice of cultivating belonging to the body I have, belonging to the perhaps different way I process information, or the different things my body is doing that other people's bodies may not be doing? What is that felt sense of the inhale and that exhale of acceptance, of self acceptance? As I've experienced, and perhaps you have too, it is exhausting practicing my best of this, that sitting up straight, wide eyed approach to myself and the world. What's so interesting is I can't inauthentically belong. I don't believe that's possible, to belong and be inauthentic. And it comes with discernment. You know, the words are right, but the vibe isn't right. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a projection that I'm going to grit my teeth. It is perhaps, if through the practice developing some spaciousness, we can decide whether this is a place to stay or a place that doesn't suit at this moment. It's not a critique of anything, it's an awareness, discernment, and capacity. I can say that I've been into some very places that had with it the possibility for the development of a sense of belonging, but it was not within my capacity. Nothing is wrong. Perhaps I was tired. Perhaps I needed some alone time and was forcing myself to be in situations that worked against my opportunity to belong in that moment. And most of all, I believe it requires the embrace of the journey and wisdom of our lives. Belonging is not attachment. I think, having been in a cult, that it belonging, that sort of artificial and fake belonging, is very seductive, because you have these people, these places where you can go, and we've known each other a while, and there can be a grasping of, I'm going to do whatever I can do to stay because I want to belong. I want to be held. But that's not belonging, that's compliance. And it works against the liberatory intent of this practice in all wisdom traditions, which wants us to be free. There is not enough amputation that is possible to suit people. I'm not going to talk like this. I'm going to sit still when I want to move, or I'm going to move when I want to sit still. Whatever is happening, I'm just going to cut off that knowing. And perhaps if you stay long enough, that amputated knowing can be buried under a lot of disconnection from the heart. It's not an exchange. If you'll do this, I do that. I'll do that. And I've done a number of those things within myself, and perhaps some of you have too. Making a deal. If I do this, then this will happen. And often in my experience, it doesn't. And even when it doesn't support freedom. It doesn't support joy. It supports falsity. And often the jobs I've done it with, I don't even know if that was necessary, because it can become a brutal habit. And I am not naive to believe that if you present your true self, it will be, oh, there'll be balloons and a parade going, yay, you did it. We're so happy. You are letting us see you. Often it can be rejection. And that is a gift. To know where you're not welcomed. A courageous heart is one that is unafraid, the cultivation of fearlessness, to be open to the world no matter what. Jack Kornfield. And I do want to acknowledge that rings different. Jack Kornfield is a white man. That rings different as a person of a color, as a black person in this country, as part of the LGBTQIA plus person in this country, and the benefit of choosing to do that is even greater, as well as the price of doing it is even greater. Because vulnerability is a state of being aware. And choosing to be exposed to being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally, is a courageous act. And one that, again, there is discernment. There is not the constant battles. It's choosing. When will this support my liberation, and when will it not? I'm a job. I'm here to do what they're paying me for, to be civil, and I'm out. And even within that, what is the courageous move to be within that? the liberatory move to be within that. Where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? T.S. Eliot. In the Jodo Shinshu Buddhist tradition, there is a word called Shinjin, and it means true and trusting. True and trusting. Giving up a sense of wrongness. I am choosing to believe that I am not wrong. That my clarity is not an attack against myself or anyone else. And in that remembering, in that awareness, connecting deeper and deeper into the courage to be. In these teachings, there's the first arrow, I messed up. I should. And that second arrow is, let me explain all the things you should. And in cultivating the courage to belong, you might give up that second arrow. And then possibly giving up that first arrow, even as they're in awareness. I've been in places recently where I just noticed just the default to, okay, I'm different from everyone here. And even when that's not visually the case, there can also be an arising because of a lifetime of suspicion and not belonging to myself. So, of course, if I don't belong to myself, how can I belong anywhere else? And even as I've cultivated that, there is that switch. But the gift of the practice is the awareness of, nothing is wrong. I am choosing to be where I am. And I belong. So now let me be curious. And the spaciousness that allows the curiosity for the discernment of saying, yeah, this is an amazing space and I'm pleased I came. That can be the belonging of the moment, but it might provide an opportunity to connect to a person or two. That's unexpected. That's unexpected. I just want to share briefly what for me has been the roadmap to awareness of belonging. And they're called the four immeasurables. And you might be aware of them: metta, universal friendliness; karuna, compassion; mudita, sympathetic joy; upekkha, equanimity. but they also have their near enemies that are just as supportive. This practice calls us to embrace the sweet stuff and the stuff that's not sweet as well. The metta, can be morphed into possessiveness. Oh, I'm aware, yeah. The compassion can be shift into not awareness that we are connected, but I feel sorry for you. Anybody ever had people call up when we're not well and know the difference between somebody being with you and somebody going, yeah, you sick, huh? You really sick. Let me tell you, yeah, tell me some more about how sick you are. I'm feeling great, but let me tell you, yeah. Mudita, sympathetic joy, can move into a superficiality, but also a craving. Oh, I'm so happy that you're happy. I want what you have. We can become envious. And equanimity can move into indifference. And all of that is human. It's the noticing, it's the cultivating of what we want to cultivate, but also the noticing of what we don't want to cultivate. But we got to notice, like in being in the garden, how are you going to grow the vegetables you want if you don't acknowledge the weeds that take the energy from what you want to grow? So we got to notice the weeds. And the weeds are just not supportive. We don't need, the weeds aren't terrible. We're not trying to have you take the energy from the stuff that will feed me. I do not believe that this is the path for the smart. It is for those who choose to be courageous. And all of these paths require courage. Because there's a reason why we're inundated with plastic as opposed to real materials. Because it's cheaper and it's easy. But in choosing not to do that, I want to share that ease is our birthright. Enoughness is our birthright. We hear, that's sufficient. No questions. The earth does not say, I don't know, have you been worthy today? Did you do all your work? I believe that it's my example to follow, and I invite you to follow the example. The birds don't say, I don't know, maybe I'll sing. I don't know, are you worthy of singing? They don't worry about that. They just sing. I would invite you to cheer, recognize and cheer your courage to this moment. The courage to notice when you are really connected to compassion, and the courage it takes to be aware with, yeah, I don't care. Don't care. Both are supportive. And perhaps the courage to stay with the I don't care for a while. To connect to that, what happens what happens in my body when I'm feeling I don't careness? Maybe I need to support that. Maybe that's the rest that's available to me. Maybe I have to not care in order to get rest so that I can care more appropriately later. Everybody's different, and we're all the same. Thank you for choosing what Cole Arthur Riley calls choosing to be in our sacred company. We are sacred beings. We are precious beings. We belong. Thank you for your time and attention. Aisha bowing out.